Right, thank you everybody for your forbearance during that short interval. Meeting is now reconvened. And the first stage of this, we have amendment in the background. The first stage is to propose and have the paper accepted for debate. So I will formally propose the paper as it stands, and I'm looking for someone to second that.
I'm saying.
Thank you very much. The paper is now proposed and seconded. It is now subject to an amendment, which will now be proposed, seconded, and accepted or not. If it's accepted, it's incorporated into the paper for correct clerk. And then, therefore, the paper you will be voting for is the amended version of the paper that's in front of you now. So the amendment will be up on the screen now. I'll just read it out for the benefit of people who can't see that far. But, in the conclusion. That's the wrong one.
What was it that one? What to do that?
I have to get you to read it out, Jacob.
No, I've seen it, but I would have liked to have seen something about the storage of cooking oils, which is one of the main problems. I see nothing on the report about that.
Hang on, guys. So we'll get to that just shortly.
All that I'm probably really helpful presentations like that.
All right. Jacob will read the amendment out because I can't seem to get it on the screen.
Yeah, apologies for that. So the condition that we're proposing is an amendment is that prior to the hot food takeaway use commencing, a waste management strategy shall be submitted to and approved in writing by the planning authority. This strategy shall include details of the arrangements for the safe storage of waste, the arrangement for the collection and uplift of all waste, measures to prevent litter, odour and vermin. And the reasons that we've applied are in the interest of amenity and appropriate waste management.
Thank you. And Councillor Brindley, I think this is your motion.
I'm happy to propose that amendment.
And do we have a seconder for that?
I'd be prepared to second that.
Thank you. Councillor Earl, that's seconded. So the motion, which we have heard, has been proposed and seconded, and we will now debate that. Does anyone wish to debate the motion? No? Right, we'll take it by a show of hands whether the motion is to be accepted. That's unanimous. Thank you very much. So the paper is now amended to include that section. We're now debating the paper as amended. Does anyone wish to add anything to the debate? No? Are we content that we have enough information to make a decision?
Yep.
We are. Yes. Okay. I will ask for show of hands in favour of accepting the paper. Paper is unanimously accepted. Thank you very much. We move on now to item 5. That's if any members of the public want to take this opportunity to
Later.
right, note that members of the public have left. Ursula have accused herself of declaration of interest in proceedings. Paper 5, which is the application for planning permission to make alterations and to add an extension to the front, side and rear of an existing church at 152 High Street to the Cooltree. And this report will be given to us by Mark. But before we do that, I'm going to ask Jacob to make a slight correction.
Yeah, just before we proceed, I wanted to highlight an error in the condition in Appendix 1. So the Murray Square clock is in fact not listed. It does state in Appendix 1 that it is. And when we were checking the reports, we thought we'd missed the listing previously in the previous reason for refusal. But it's just proof that you can check something too many times. Although it's really important historic asset for Tillicoultry, we would be relying on the condition written in 3.3 of the report for this recommendation. Just to highlight that.
Thank you. Mark, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. This is application reference number 26/0038 full, which is for the extension of the existing church building on the north side of High Street at the junction with Moss Road. Full planning permission is sought for the addition of an extension to the rear and west side and a full width extension to the front elevation. The recommendation to the committee is to refuse planning permission. For context, the site plan shows the position of the building within the town. The record is not a listed building and it is not in Tillicoultry Conservation Area, although it is immediately adjacent to the Conservation Area boundary. Nevertheless, it is a prominent building in the townscape, being subject to passing views along the A91 and long views to the south. In broad principle terms, an extension to the church building may be acceptable, but on the basis of the reasoning set out in the report, under consideration, specific proposals are not considered to be acceptable in this case. The applicant has been offered the opportunity to amend the scheme so that it only includes the rear and side extension in order that we could have potentially granted that and then dealt with front extension at another date, but they have decided to have the whole extension determined as it stands. I would note that it's only the front extension to the building that is considered to be contentious. This slide shows the proposed west elevation, so it includes both the rear and side extension and also the front being the right of the screen as you're looking at it there. This slide shows the proposed north or rear elevation. For the avoidance of doubt, the proposed extension to the rear and side is not considered to be contentious because the scale, form, design and materials are considered to be appropriate and its visual impact is likely to be minor in nature. This photo shows the existing rear and east elevations for the record. These buildings at the rear would require to be removed if planning permission were granted, but they're not considered to make a strong positive contribution to the character of the area or be sufficiently characterful that we would seek their attention. This photo shows the existing front elevation, just for the record. The impacts of the proposal are as follows. In terms of impact on the built environment, the proposed front extension is of a contemporary design using a palette of materials including stone, glass and metal. The materials themselves are considered to be acceptable in the context. However, the scale, form, design and massing of the extension are not. The proposed front extension would measure 6.2 metres high at its highest point, 3.5 metres deep and 11.6 metres wide. It is considered that the proposed front extension would dominate and detract from the traditional appearance of the church, which would present a stark and jarring contrast with it. The proposed extension would also obscure the traditional features which add to the church building's character, namely the existing Gothic windows and doorway. This would be contrary to policy 14 of NPF 4, particularly with regard to distinctiveness placemaking. As poorly designed buildings can have a long-term detrimental impact on their localities, it is considered that on balance, the proposal would fail to make a positive contribution to the local area and that the changes would detract from the appearance of this building, harming the character of the area and made significantly worse by its prominent position in the streetscape. The following two photos serve to show the building in situ, to show how the extension could be seen in passing along the A91 from the east from Dollar, and an approach from the south. That map shows the conservation area boundary. The church is immediately adjacent to that. In terms of impact on the historic environment, the council considers the church to be a non-designated heritage building for the purposes of LDP policy EA24 and NPF4 policy 7. The council notes that the reuse of the building is supported in principle, but the impacts of the front extension on both the historic character of the building and the character of the wider area are sufficiently negative to outweigh that support. It is considered that the proposed front elevation would adversely affect the setting of Tillicoultry Conservation Area due to its visual prominence on an important arterial A road. It will affect the perception of the conservation area for people moving through Tillicoultry along the A91 and also those entering the town from the south. It should be noted at this point that the use of the current building is not at issue. I know that's specified in the report, but for clarity, the use is not the subject of the planning application. And in fact, the continued use of the building as a church would not require any planning permission in and of itself. In terms of other impacts, well, in terms of impact on the natural environment, the reuse and proposed adaptations to the building are considered to offer climate change benefits in accordance with NPF4 policies. In terms of impact on roads and travel, the proposal is not considered to have any adverse impact on the road network or travel patterns. But in terms of neighbouring uses and residents, there's not considered to be any material loss of neighbouring residential amenity or increase in noise as a result of the proposal. In terms of other material considerations, planning application at hand must be considered de novo by the committee and determined having regard to the development plan and other material considerations as provided for by Section 25 of the Town and Country Planning Scotland Act 1997. The key material consideration for members is the previous refusal of planning permission, which was referenced 25//0078 full. This was refused under delegated powers on 31st of July last year. The previous refusal was based on two reasons. The first reason is important, more so than the second. I will read the first reason verbatim for clarity. Was that the extension to the front of the building, due to its modern design and large size, is unacceptable. It does not pay sufficient respect to the building's historic character and identity and would overly dominate the frontage of the church. It would present a harmful addition to the streetscape, having a long-term detrimental impact on its appearance and the setting of the conservation area, and it fails to deliver the qualities required for a successful place. This conflicts with the Council's supplementary guidance on placemaking and fails to meet the requirements of Policies 7 and 14 of the National Planning Framework 4 and Policies EA23 and EA24 of Plant Manager's Local Development Plan of 2015. This reason for refusal has not been addressed by the proposal under consideration today. The front extension has the same dimensions and butterfly roof as before, and the differences are cosmetic rather than substantive, as can be seen from this drawing. That was the previously refused south elevation. The specifics are detailed in the report of handling. However, the extension is the same size as was previously proposed and would dominate the front elevation to the same extent. It would obscure the original features of the front elevation in a materially similar way. For comparison for members, this is the proposed extension under consideration as compared to the one that we refused. It's a slightly different size from one slide to the other, but that's just a issue. The second reason for the refusal of permission previously was a new door which was proposed on the east elevation. This element has been removed from the scheme and is no longer considered of concern. Therefore, in conclusion, overall, although it is acknowledged that there would be some benefits to the users of the church and the local community as a result of this proposal, and that in principle part of the development can be supported, the design proposed is considered to raise significant concerns and should not be accepted. As previously stated, the extension to the front would fail to make a positive contribution to the local area and would fail to pay sufficient respect to the historic character of the building. The proposed front extension would detract from the building's appearance, not only harming its own character, but that of the wider area, and this would be exacerbated by the church's prominent position in the town centre. The community benefits of providing a larger church in Tillicoultry are not considered to outweigh the planning harms or amenity that would be caused by the proposed front extension. On balance, and for the reasons given, refusal is recommended to members.
Thank you, Mark. Now, I'll offer it up to members for questions. Councillor Mark.
I'd just like
You'll
to
look
ask
one
one
way.
or son. Or son.
Okay, Councillor Redder, you've got.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and I apologise for that. 339, it says that discussions have been going on between the planning team and representatives of the church. Can you expand a little bit on that, please?
Yeah, so I'll come in on that one. This application follows a previous application that was refused. In terms of the application, it's their right that when an application is submitted, they get a decision. But it was made clear to us that they wanted the application assessing as a whole. So there are some parts of this application that the planning team would definitely support, but we feel that the extension at the front of the church is tipping the balance towards a refusal.
You say there was some points that were acceptable and other points that weren't, am I correct?
Yes, that's correct. So the changes to the side of the church and the changes at the rear of the church, we would accept in policy terms and in planning terms, but we feel that the extension to the front is not acceptable and would have more harm than good.
Can you explain why you think it wasn't acceptable?
The extension to the front. So that's detailed in reason for refusal. So about its modern design, not being sufficient respect to the character of the existing church. It also because of its prominence as well. So it's fortunately or unfortunately located on a very prominent junction. So it's experienced by a wide range of people that extend beyond Tillicoochry. So those harms that we've listed in 3.3, which are tied back to policies, that probably exacerbate because of the positioning of this church. So you've got Stirling Mill and the warehouse and the retail park, which is one of Clackmannish's most visited attractions. And this is on the road that connects all of the villages. So that is a factor in that balance.
Okay, thank you very much for that.
Councillor Wilson.
I just wanted to clarify that the main reason for objection is the aesthetic, the frontage, how the frontage looks and doesn't respect, in the view of the planners, the existing church building. And the reason to that is that east door has been it's no longer going ahead. So that was another reason for objection. So the principle that we're discussing today is really the look of it and the extension to the frontage, as I understand it. Is that right? That's the sole reason for objection at the moment. Sorry.
Yes, there's no question of, for example, as I said, the use of the church is purely on the design of this particular extension. And it's not so much a question of whether, it's a design that you like or don't like. It's more a question of, is it a design that can be supported on planning policy reasons or opposed on planning policy? In terms of extensions to buildings, it's always about putting the right extension on the right building in the right place. So there might be another context where an extension like this would be acceptable, but we're looking at this particular building.
And in the paper it says we haven't carried out any other consultations on this aspect. The Royal Institute of Architects for Scotland or indeed our own Clackmannanshire Heritage Trust, they haven't carried out any other consultations on the aesthetic and the design of it.
No, we haven't. It's what we call a non. Hang on a second. I wrote this down because I didn't want to forget it. it's a non-designated heritage asset. It's not a listed building and it's not in the conservation area. So we wouldn't, for example, have consulted with Historic Environment Scotland. It's essentially a planning judgment that underpins the recommendation that we then put to you. But it's, in terms of a planning assessment, it's scale, form, design, mass, and materials, location, impact on the building, which is kind of planner stuff.
And did you have a view as to how you thought it should look? Obviously, they've protected the main window, but are there any other? You talked about the Gothic style, but did you have a particular view and an alternative of how you thought it should have looked?
That's a tricky one because we have to assess what's put in front of us. I mean, in terms of discussions, I've had discussions with the architect who's here today. You know, we discussed elements of it that were positive and elements of it that were less. So, but at the end of the day, I and you have to what's there. So we, you know, whilst we can negotiate within the scope of a planning application to get something that may be better for a given value of better, it's not really a question of me or you having to decide what would be better than this. It's just a question of whether we approve this or not. If they had broken the application up and we were just looking at granting area one, we could then perhaps get more involved in what we would prefer for a front elevation, but essentially we have to take it on its face.
And finally, this clearly has been an ongoing discussion, and basically is this it? It's an impasse between the applicant is unwilling to try and consider altering the frontage versus,
Well, I wouldn't speak for the applicants as such, but in the course of the discussions that we've had, they've essentially made it clear that this is what they would like, and ultimately people should always apply for planning permission for what they want, and then we can determine whether or not it's going to pass muster or not. If you refuse it today, they do have the right of appeal against that to the Scottish Government DPEA.
Okay, thank you. I hope we tried to avoid that, but
That was my fairly.
Thanks, Chair. Jacob, so we talked earlier on about a couple of bits of this that would meet approval and or no concerns around. It's really about the front piece of this. But my understanding is we have to either accept or reject this application in its entirety. We can't pick and choose the bits that we'd find favour with us or not. So first of all, I'm assuming the applicant is aware of that, and has there been any conversation with them around bringing forward an application of the bits that would have met approval in isolation?
Yes, so they are aware of that. You have to look at it in its entirety. And like I said, there are parts of this that we feel we would support. There are parts that we think are harmful enough to refuse, and on balance, we think that's what the recommendation is. On balance, is a refusal. But there is some judgment and balance here to be had by committee members. So if you place more of a positive on the enhancements that potentially are coming forward, you can do that as a committee, but would then be accepting that there is some harm, but the benefits outweigh the harm. So that is one of the reasons why we brought it to committee, because that balance and judgment might be felt differently by committee members, whereas in our professional opinion and looking at it purely from the application, we feel that balance hasn't been tipped and it should be refused.
Okay, let's dig into that balance a little bit more then, because I get that bit, but the policies say several things, and it's a question of balancing community benefits against the aesthetics of the thing as well. So let's start with the community benefits. Mark, is the design delivering, forget the aesthetics, the design itself delivering a specific and not measurable, but appreciable benefit to the users of the facility that is not available at the moment?
Well, if you were to ask the applicant, they would say yes. I mean, it's essentially providing additional floor space, office space, and a vestibule people to. I mean, I don't go to too many churches myself, but I mean, it seems a fairly understandable desire underpinning it.
Well, we kind of have to have a sense of what that benefit is, because community benefits are one of the balancing acts that we have to do here, because it could be the case if a development was producing an immensely big community benefit, you would forgo the consideration of the aesthetics. But it could, the balance can go the other way. If it's not producing much of benefit and it's ugly as sin, then you do it. So somewhere in the middle is where we've got to decide where we are with this, because it's modern frontage going on to a traditional rear face. So I am trying to get an idea of where the balance is coming into this. What is the point of it? Why should we put up with those subject to the change, to the modernism of it? Why should we accept that? What does the community get in exchange for toning down one consideration? Need Norman to be beefed up. Am I making myself clear or not?
Yeah, you are. So, I think we come back to the points that, you know, planning can control and consider. So at present, it is very much a vacant building, so it's unused. So there are positives for bringing that back into use. And there are bits on either side of the coin. So, you know, policy 7 will talk about preserving and enhancing a historic asset and places. But then it also talks about weighing in the social, environmental and economic benefits. So, in terms of this application, there are benefits because there will be better access arrangements at the front. So there's a ramp that's proposed. There will be more community spaces at the rear of the church. There is a document within the planning application that talks about the activities that may be provided there, but that's where planning doesn't have the control over that. So at this moment in time, there isn't a community space that is as big connected with the church and that or is usable. So we presume that there will be community benefits in that sphere, but we couldn't, that would be up for the applicant to say, you know, what these benefits are going to be in terms of, you know, they're going to run a play group, a nursery, you know, fair, all these things that are typically connected with a church, but we couldn't hold them to that.
Thank you. Well, we will be hearing from the applicant or the agent rather, the agent in person. So we should maybe touch on some of those things there. Councillor McTagg.
Thanks, convener. Just touching on the point that you've just made, I would question a question I would like answered is, can we demonstrate that by approving this building alteration that there will actually be a community benefit? What evidence do we have that supports that?
So in terms of the existing use, there's nothing stopping that church being used for the purpose that it's currently got. I'm not too sure that we could hold people to a demonstrable community benefit, but you can see on the plans that it's going to have, you know, better access arrangements, better toilet facilities, rooms which are multi-purpose that could be opened up for the community, but that doesn't, it's not within our gift to say how and when that's done. I think also probably good to highlight is you've got an extension at the front, you've got an extension at the rear, but it's not, we couldn't say that it's not built in multiple phases, so you might end up with the extension at the front and not the extension at the rear. Is just something to put out there.
Yeah. The extension of the front, how far does that stretch, Mark, from? Beg pardon?
Can I come back in on?
Come back, oh yes, of course, yeah, please do.
So it's just something, it's just to say that if we were only looking at the rear elevation extensions to this, I think it would be very straightforward to say that the community benefits that provide the additional space and facilities would certainly not be kind of offset by the design and scale and form of it. It's really pressing on us because of the prominence and because of the significance of the intervention that's proposed. It's a balancing exercise, but if we were purely looking at the rear, but again, I think there would be no question of it outweighing the community benefits of that.
Thanks.
Was your question about along the lines of what if they only do the front bit and don't do the rest?
It was more justification. If there was a evidence that the demand was already there for the use of this space, then it might tip the balance.
Sure.
But if it's we'll build the buildings and they will come kind of idea, then that tips the balance another way, sort of thing. So it's if there's evidence that these spaces will actually provide a community benefit, and is there a demand there right now that is lacking? Is there a demand there for something that it's not being provided at the moment?
Perhaps we could ask the question this way then. Is there anything in the current design for the front part that could not be done, which provides a service or facility which could not be done another way? Is there something unique about this design that has additional benefits over a more traditional look that perhaps reflected the kind of front?
I would tend to say no. I mean, to be honest, sorry, lost my train of thought. We're not, I think, we're not in any way saying that there wouldn't be community benefits arising from this. The job for members is to weigh up, well, let's assume that it is a broadly beneficial idea. And then say, well, on the other hand, how harmful is this? We'll set the rear extension aside, just look at the front. How much more harmful is it? Is it sufficiently harmful that we think the community benefits are outweighed or not? That's ultimately the test.
Yes, what it kind of boils down to, and this is nuances and balances. If 25 or 40 people say this is great because we can now use a church, and 550 people say it looks horrible, then the balance is out, and that's the difficulty for us to try and weigh up here. Take a pill, with.
Yeah, no. All I would say is there was a supporting document with this application, and there was consultation with the church community. So it hasn't been born out of an idea that one person's had. The church community do feel that this is what they require to deliver the activities that they deliver. There are issues, as I understand, about having to do multiple services because there isn't a space big enough to hold the community, and there are aspirations as well that they're wanting to take forward in terms of additional activities. So although we couldn't hold them to that, without that space, that they're going to be struggling to be able to deliver on those ambitions. So it is a little bit of a chicken and egg. So what they're wanting to do, they can't do with what they've got at the moment, and vice versa. But we have come unstuck on this bit at the front, and in terms of design, we're not designers, so we don't design it, and we'll try and negotiate something better, but we haven't been able to do this in this situation, and it's been very clear that the applicants are wanting a decision based on what they've got. So there will be benefits as well arising from the front. So you've got that new access, which is the ramped access, which they don't have at the moment. But it is a very fine balance, but we're not assessing it against something else. It's assessed on its own merits.
Councillor Bennett.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I'm just asking the bit that we're all arguing about, but discussing, is that in the footprint of the original building, or does it come out at the front?
Yeah, it projects at the front, and it takes away the visibility of some of the Gothic architecture there. So it's been designed in a way that it retains the central window, But in terms of its form and scale, we don't feel that pays sufficient respect to the overall character of that building, which has then got the prominence as well of being at that junction.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just one other point that came up. I see here from the papers that under 3.10, there have been no consultations. Can I ask the applicant, did you consult with the church users or the surrounding community in any way regarding this application?
So, sorry, Councillor Earl, I'll probably come in on that one. So that's for the planning department, and that would be professional consultations such as
that
roads
professional
or
consultation.
historic environment.
My apologies.
We'll maybe amend it. Let's put that forward.
Well, in that case, can I still ask a question of the applicant? If he or the church users consulted the people round about to ask if they had any objections to it going on?
Well, why don't we just take the opportunity to invite the agent up? Is the agent here present? Welcome aboard. You've listened to the conversation so far, so you kind of know where we are with this, and you know the things to concentrate on. We've got a balancing decision to make here, because it's one of these areas where policy is there and guidance, it doesn't, no straight line. So we need to understand the benefits of this solution, as opposed to the benefits of another. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair and members of the committee. Thank you for this opportunity to speak in support of the application. My name is Scott Wham, and I'm the architect and the agent for the application. I would like to focus on three aspects in this submission now. Firstly, the vision behind the proposals. Secondly, some policy considerations. And thirdly, some design factors. So if I start with the vision for the project. So Tillicoultry Baptist Church wants to serve the local community. Our vision is to create a new community asset in the heart of Tillicoultry that allows greater flexibility for both church and community use. This proposal does not replace the existing building. This will remain in use and also available to the community. We were given the hillside building after it lain vacant for a number of years, and we want to breathe new life into it and bring it back into use for church and community benefit. Without adaptation and enhancement, there is no real viable future for this building. This proposal is about much more than an extension to a building. It's about investing in a community asset, improving accessibility, increasing capacity for community activities, and securing the future of a prominent building in the heart of Tillicoultry. Secondly, on to some policy considerations. The officer's report acknowledges many positive aspects of the proposal. It states that the principal development and the side and rear extensions are acceptable, identifies no significant impacts on neighbours or road safety, and recognises the sustainability, accessibility and community benefits that the project will deliver. The report also acknowledges that one of the two reasons for refusal from the previous application, the side door, has been addressed. So the remaining issue, as we're talking right now, is solely to do with the design of the front extension. The proposal supports wider planning objectives though. It reuses and improves an existing building rather than requiring development elsewhere. It incorporates renewable technologies such as air source pumps, as well as upgrades to the thermal performance of the building. And it occupies a highly sustainable town centre location within easy walking distance of local homes, public transport and other community facilities. These are exactly the kinds of outcomes that NPF 4, the National Planning Policy, seeks to encourage. We've already heard references to Policies 7 and 14. Policy 7, as we heard, states developments which sensitively repair and enhance the building and bring historic buildings back into beneficial use will be supported. The proposal, in our opinion, enhances what is there and is a critical part of the flow of the building, making it attractive, accessible and usable. Policy 7 also notes that where impacts cannot be avoided, they should be minimised. In discussions with the planning officers, we have adapted our proposal to take account of the concerns about impact, and in our view have minimised that as much as possible to strike that balance between impact and use. Policy 14 is also referred to, and that looks at looking at that policy, its thrust is to improve the quality of an area, whether in urban or rural locations, and regardless of scale. It then sets out 6 qualities which are the benchmark for supported applications: healthy, pleasant, connected, distinctive, sustainable and adaptable. This proposal, in our view, meets each of these qualities. Specifically distinctive, which encourages attention to detail of local architectural styles, which are to be interpreted literally or creatively into designs which reinforce identity. The application, in our view, does that. Further, mention is made of the neighbouring conservation area, and it's already been noted that when delineating the conservation area, the church was not included, nor it is a listed building. 9 representations have been submitted in support of the application, which recognise the value of the church as a place of worship and as an important community resource. When balancing planning applications, it's important to consider both benefits and harm. The identified harm relating to the visual impact is greatly outweighed by the benefits, which include increased community capacity, enhanced sustainability, and support for local living. Members may legitimately reach a different conclusion from officers when interpreting planning policy and where they consider that the planning balance favours approval. Lastly, on design, we would respectfully suggest that too much weight has been placed on what is ultimately a subjective judgment about architectural appearance. While it is recognised as making a positive contribution to the townscape, planning policy does not require new additions to historic buildings to imitate the original architecture. The proposed extension adopts a contemporary design approach that clearly distinguishes old from new. This is a recognised conservation principle and allows the original building to remain legible rather than creating a false historical appearance. The report accepts that the materials proposed are of high quality and that modern intervention is acceptable elsewhere in the building. The question, therefore, is not whether contemporary design is acceptable in principle, but whether the benefits of this particular design outweigh the concerns raised. And we believe that they do.
So it would be much more through, as we're getting along.
I'll be brief. Prior to the submission, we explored various design options for the front extension. This included a fully glazed option, which was discounted due to concerns regarding solar gain and potential vandalism, which has been experienced at the other church site. We believe that current proposals achieve the right balance between glazing and masonry on the facade. And to conclude, for all of the above factors, we would respectfully submit that the significant and lasting public benefits of this proposal, its compliance in our view with NPF 4, the respect in terms of the design to the existing building, all require this application to be approved. The concerns that have been raised regarding its appearance, which we don't accept, are very much outweighed by its compliance and benefit. For these reasons, we would ask the committee to support this application and to grant planning permission. Thank you.
Okay, and just going back to policy 14, and you mentioned the 6 qualities of successful places. I'm just looking at the wording of distinctive, which is one of the aspects of it. Supporting attention to detail of local architectural styles and natural landscapes to be interpreted literally or creatively into designs to reinforce identity. Do you feel that the modern proportion reinforces the identity of the original building?
This project is I would say, a once in a generation opportunity to do something significant with this building. It represents a very substantial investment in a community asset. And one of the key drivers for that was to create a distinctive identity for the building going forward. And we believe that the design of the extension helps to achieve that. We're respecting the rose window and we're creating a more accessible access to the building. There's also a small office space. I know there was a question earlier about, well, what is it for? There is actually a small space there which is intended for staff members of the church to meet with members of the public, rather than having to walk them all the way through the sanctuary space to the buildings to the rear. It is an unfortunate site in the sense that it's quite constrained. The boundary comes at an angle towards us. That is our one opportunity that we have to really engage with the street. So we feel that that's why it deserves that level of prominence.
Lost you. That was you, Jim.
Thanks, Convener. Can we rewind and go back to the catalyst for this? So, I'm trying to work out, as I mentioned earlier, the evidence of community benefit, the evidence of need for this, which would obviously be a big factor in the decision-making process of whether that outweighs the evidence that we've already heard for planning regarding the aesthetics. So where did this idea come from? What was the catalyst for deciding that the church needed these extensions, and what evidence do you have that this will be well used and will have high impact community benefit?
Sorry, can you go with your permission? I'll speak. My name's Stuart McQueen. I'm one of the trustees and elders of Tillicoultry Baptist Church, just to give you the context of that. Where has this come from? Where's the catalyst? We've been very fortunate. Our church is growing. We now have a membership of over 120. We've had to split to 2 services, but that's just the one part of a Sunday. The church is used, and the buildings. You have the Murray Square annex. They are used every day by community services. We have addiction support services in there on a weekly basis. We've been approached by an after-school club to see if we could accommodate putting them in, and we cannot do that in our current building. It's just not fit for purpose. But they have come forward asking if we can use that. We have concerts in the building. Mother and toddler, Tillywinks is not a mother and toddler group, but you know the equivalent of what I'm saying. So throughout that, and we're limited with the space that we have, and we're limited particularly with the toilet resources that we have in our current building, that we want to actually open that up to further use. So we are being approached. We have the Christmas light switch on. We're used right next door to that, where people will come in and take part in just that community activity, but also provide with food. We also have a larder, a food larder in the annex, which we've had to move into the bigger space because it's being well attended and well used. Again, we want to expand that out. So it's really driven by what the community are asking us to do. It's not just about a church sitting going, we want a bigger building. It's not about that at all. It's about the service that we want to provide to that community. So it's driven from the community.
Thanks for that. That's the something up.
Yeah, to my mind, this all boils down to the challenge that communities across Scotland are facing. We've got all these old churches, some are listed, in this case it's not, and looking for imaginative uses for them. So my key question, you may feel you've touched upon this already, but this is your public face, the church's public face out into Tillicoultry and Clackmannanshire. So what's your kind of design philosophy behind that, in terms of how you've, effectively your design's been criticised? So how would you respond to that? I know you've covered aspects already, but
I suppose we have explored many different options. We've not just arrived at this design by chance. There's been a whole process that we've gone through to reach this point. We've looked at smaller versions, slightly deeper versions, and this was the one that we felt would meet the needs of the church. In terms of the actual design language, now the roof is a butterfly roof, which also symbolises, in a sense, an open book, suggests an openness towards the community. So we think that's key in terms of the design language. We didn't feel that a painted roof, as in a pitched roof, would be appropriate. It would look more like a pastiche, whereas this is something which is quite open and inviting with the clerestory windows. That would be useful, thank you. Yeah.
Just share the information drawing here.
Our concern is that we wouldn't want to have, as I say, you could have a small painted porch, but it would always look like just a pastiche and add-on that was not really in keeping with what was there originally, what was conceived originally. We're trying to do something new here, representing what the church is trying to do within the site as a whole. And to say that's the butterfly roof, which then respects the rose window. There is clerestory lights above there. And so effectively, this is the shop window, if you like, to the church. It is a busy street as people drive past here. It will be illuminated. It will be very clear for all to see that there's something going on here. At present, we have two blue storm doors. The church looks quite closed at present. You wouldn't know there was any life about it. I think this signifies there is new life about the building.
What are the colourways on that? It's a pity that's not coloured illustrated.
The colours here, so yeah, it's an ashlar sandstone, so a smooth face sandstone, which we'd be using for the masonry elements. And you've got vertical glazing, clerestory glazing as well. And then the roof itself would probably finish with a metal cladding, perhaps an anthracite grey, to complement the colour palette. So sorry.
What colour is the stonework?
It's a blonde stone, sorry, it's an ashlar sandstone, to match the blonde facework of the church.
So you're hoping to match those two together?
Aligning the two, yes. Although it'll be a slightly different texture. This will be a smooth-faced ashlar in a large format, as opposed to the rubble work of.
But from a distance, you might just see the one background colour.
That's right. That was the intention. Is that it would still have the appearance of a work.
Fly wings are anthracite grey, not black.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. Any further questions? No. Now I think we're still to hear from Carl Henderson. Carl here. Carl's online, I see. Don't see him. No, okay, monitoring. Right. Right, members, you wish to ask the agent and the applicant any further questions? No? Okay, thanks very much. Thank you. Appreciate that. Right, well, I will formally propose the paper, get the debate started. Looking for a second. Councillor McDaggett, thank you again. Okay, shall we debate? Who wants to kick off?
Right,
James.
Thanks, Kabina. I'm swaying towards approval on this, if I'm honest. I don't know how others feel, but the reason I wanted to pull out the community benefit was, does that genuinely outweigh the aesthetic, the objection to the aesthetics of this? And in my opinion, it does. The communities are facing so much disruption, etc. I feel that anything that offers the community a helping hand, we have to seriously consider. And genuinely thinking that, especially since the aesthetics of the building was explained, where it seems that there will be a blended element to that extension. It's not going to sort of just hit you in the face, stick out like a sore thumb. It's going to be more blended. I'm swayed towards being minded to approve this.
Okay, fine.
Thanks, Convener.
Done.
So I'm one of the local councillors for the area. Like Fiona, I'm aware of different conversations, etc. If I declare an interest in that sense, but I don't think it's enough for me to exclude that I haven't expressed an opinion in this application. What I'm aware of is we've got a growing dynamic that the Baptist Church is growing and do add significantly to the well-being of our community. It is true, as a local councillor, I'm apprehensive because we've got a large number of buildings that are allocated for community use. The Bencliffe Community Centre, for instance, just been taken over and looking for clients. We've got the Devonvale Hall that was absolutely valuable in tackling the recent Colston incident. We've got also Tillicoultry Community Hall. What I would say is, though, it is a recognised feature in Tillicoultry. Edinburgh has its Holy Corner, but we have our Holy Square here, and it is surrounded by the Baptist Church sort of assets. As I said, it is growing, I feel the applicants have addressed a number of the concerns that our services have raised, and indeed it seems to have boiled down, and they've made changes to the design. In many ways, the Baptist Church, it's their baby, it's their public face as well. So I'm sure that will have been debated within their own community as to how they're presenting it to the community. The wider application, I have absolutely no doubt will bring benefits to the Tillicoultry community and the wider community in Clonmanager. We need to be growing these sort of assets. And it's very rare that we actually have somebody in Clonmanager at the moment that's coming forward with this type of proposal. Admittedly, you know, it's a religious organisation. They have their own interests. They have their own community. I don't think we should stifle that in the sake of design. As you probably know, Chair, I sit on the Clonmanager Heritage Trust, and I've actually had to exclude myself from debates on heritage and features. I think what we've got here is the church is not listed. It's not in the conservation area. A number of, you could have a design competition or whatever, but the Baptist Church community have evolved this proposal. We, as a council, haven't reached out to other people to get another opinion on this. And as I say, sort of squaring the circle, this is an issue that all our communities are going to be facing, surplus churches, and how we balance the need of moving these assets forward in a positive way whilst trying to respect the sort of historic role that they had. I mean, that church there is at the junction in Tillicoultry, because it's a statement there saying, you know, that this is a religious church, we're reaching out to. And I liked the comments in terms of this kind of open book. So from my point of view, I would like to move that we approve this application with standard conditions that our planners provide for us that cover the rest of the development.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I think Councillor Earl was up before you were getting free, Councillor. Councillor Earl.
Ladies first.
All ladies first, Martha.
So, lady first, you're a gentleman, Councillor. Councillor Benny.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm actually agreeing with what a lot of people are saying here, but one of the biggest things is with a church, if you've got availability to get bigger and people are coming in, we should not be stifling that. We should be saying that as a good thing. And I mean, I've got a very small church, and it's very welcoming because there's a lot of people sitting there, and there's a lot of people taking note of what's happening within the world. And I think it's a great idea to put yourself in a position where, oh, we can't do that because somebody else doesn't like the colour or the bit that's outside of the church. Is the wrong way to look at it. We should be looking at it as saying that church is ongoing, it's viable and it is working out. So don't put stuff in front of them because of that. I think it's a great idea, and I think it will do well.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Earl, your turn now.
Thank you. I'm going to agree with just about everything that's been said. I'll split my statement into two parts. One to do with the aesthetics, and I was concerned about the new against the old. But my fears have been clarified, and I'm quite happy with the applicant and the representative and to exactly what it is they're trying to do. When it comes down to community use, I was really impressed with the amount of community groups that are A, attending it at the moment, and B, would like to attend the facility. It's a good facility. as Donald said there, yes, it is a statement piece. It's right opposite the square. A square that is causing a lot of, there are a lot of trouble issues, and other organisations are dealing with that. Let's not put that as a barrier to developing that building. So, planner, I'm afraid I'm going to have to vote against it on this occasion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Fairley.
Thanks, Chair. Just for completeness, I suppose. To be honest, I came into this one myself, not sure at all this morning, but I'm going to support it. I wasn't quite sure what it was that was going to stop me being able to support it. And was looking to hear from both parties to try and convince one and another. I think for me, I've worked out for the large part, this is about aesthetics. It is really what this is around, and having listened to the applicant in terms of the vision for this, community benefits and the purpose for doing it, I think for me are very strong arguments for giving it a fair hearing at least. I think the questions you asked yourself around what the materials and they're looking to design and the colours of that would be help reassure me in terms of what it is that we're talking about putting in. And on that basis, I'm the same. I've come to the position where I think I can support this application because I think the benefits and the vision that we're talking about outweigh concerns of what.
Thank you, Councillor. Well, I must confess, as a bit of a relic myself, I came here expecting to defend the ancient architecture, but considering what we were to consider, which is the balance of benefits and aesthetics, the lack of any flag-waving crowd of people from one side or the other means it's our judgment, our decision to make it with no clear view of public opinion on it. Donald's comments about the activity of the Baptist Church are positive, very positive, and I think that supports the notion that the community benefits is a real thing. It's not just a consideration; it's a real thing. The aesthetics were a worry to me. Must confess, because I had this picture of bright colours and a rose window behind, but the fact that from a distance you're not going to see a vastly different colour scheme is a big reassurance to me. So. And I'm still teetering a wee bit on the brink because of my respect for antiquity, but yeah, okay, I think so. All right. Do we think we have enough information to make a decision? Have we debated this brilliant? Any? Right? Okay. On the show of hands to approve, no. In the show of hands to overturn the officer's decision to refuse. So by voting with your hand, you'll be saying the application can go through. All right, and we vote now. That's unanimous. Thank you all. Thank you very much. Thank you, officers, for your contributions. What? A reason? Just like it. Right. We have some more things here. Do you want to talk to it? So.
We've got creating the plan, this benefits for reasons well.
I'll just not.
No,
it's fine. So I did see that you were going that way in terms of mandate to approve. So we can't fully disclude the previous decision. So you've got to acknowledge that there's some level of harm there from that front extension. So that this is how I've worded it. Although it is acknowledged that the proposed front extension would result in a degree of visual harm to the existing building and the character, the overall benefits of the proposal, including the reuse of a long vacant property, the associated improvements to its condition, and the wider contribution to local vitality, are considered on balance to outweigh the identified harm.
Yes.
Not with that. We need to propose that.
Little guidance, I think, yeah.
I was going to say, do you not need a formal second and also standard conditions as well on the application?
Well, we have was the paperwork. Oh, it's a proposal section and they were more funny. So what we've done is okay. Ah, sorry. No additional admin required. Our purpose has been fulfilled. Well, we thank you all very much for your time and trouble and your input. It's very helpful. I'm sure you also are slightly disappointed with the decision, but hey, well, that's democracy. Thank you all.
Thank you.